Here we go. All right, welcome everybody. Cycle Turks podcast. I'm Mike Stewart. I'm your host, joined as always by the lovely and talented Dave Dalton.
And grumpy, but
Yes,
I'm
are
not
you?
grumpy today. I'm actually one of the other dwarfs, so that's good. Let's
Nice, nice. All right, well, good, Dave. I'm glad you're not grumpy today. So that's hopefully that'll help us in our podcast today.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
we're excited to have one of the three founders of a product called Freak Shake. It's exercise nutrition, recovery stuff, and I have actually been using it for a little bit, and so we'll talk about that. But Todd Newman, welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
So wait,
Yeah,
Mike, you've been taking this stuff. You're not sharing that with me. Are these like secrets?
I
You're
do. I
keeping
have a
secrets from one of your friends?
no. I have a jug for you. I just never see you anymore. Perhaps if you rode with me this past weekend, you would
I
have
know,
got the
I
jug.
know,
Yeah.
I know.
Oh,
The guilt, the
Uh-huh.
guilt.
Yes. Yeah.
how's it working for you?
Well, I think I mentioned it when in one of our communications. I was having this problem. I like the ultra stuff, so I do
Yeah.
longer events, and I was having real cramping issues, like at bedtime, sometimes even before bedtime. And
Mm,
since I've been taking these freak shakes, I don't know, maybe it's coincidence, but I haven't had the cramping post ride. So
that's
yeah, it's
great.
been great. I've just been using it almost immediately after the ride. I'll just come home,
That,
make a big shake, and then I just been putting water and
yeah,
putting in a big
that's all
cup
it
and
takes. Yeah,
yeah,
that's exactly how we're recommending you use it. We have athletes who are using it, pre and intra workout as well for on longer rides, for example, too. But I think the recovery benefits are probably the most universal, regardless of how adapted you are as an athlete. Just because of the electrolytes and carbs. Athletes just
yeah,
haven't. I think cycling, it's been interesting to watch how the fueling has evolved kind
yeah,
of in this latest modern era. It's really changed the game for these guys, but a lot of other endurance sports are, I think, not on the bandwagon fully yet. Uh,
yeah. The big carb
but the
bandwagon.
amount of carbs that people generally are still under fueling when it comes to carbohydrates.
Yeah, yeah. It is really
Even you're
interesting.
thinking that even at the pro, well, let's get even at the pro
Yeah,
level. That's interesting. But let's get to know Todd a little bit, and then I've
sure.
got like a bajillion questions because I'm obsessed with this kind of stuff.
Yes, me too.
All right, so
So
tell us about your journey to this. I'm
yeah, happy to do that. Yeah, so I'd sort of discovered I was not an athlete until college, really a serious athlete, and discovered rowing in college, and ended up walking on and then making a varsity boat my sophomore year. So, in 24 months, I kind of drank from the fire hose and just got sucked into this world of very high volume, intense training with, elite athletes and coaches at a D1 program. And kind of changed my life. I mean, it wasn't really in my, in my, I didn't think of myself as an athlete until I kind of stumbled into a sport that I was really good at.
I
And
gotta
then,
ask, how do you stumble into? I mean, that's like, I mean, I'm from back east. My high school team actually had a rowing team. It's outside of
yeah,
Syracuse, right? So we had a rowing team. It's very common, but it's not something that you necessarily just stumble into. You sort of got to find that one, right?
it's a pretty
Yeah.
funny story. I don't know. Am I allowed to curse on these on
Hell
this
yeah.
podcast?
Let her rip.
Fuck
Okay.
yeah, shit
All right.
yeah.
I'll tell.
Oh God, at
So
least we got that one off the table. Good.
yeah,
Yeah.
I was. So I went to school in New Hampshire. I went to college with the idea I'm going to camp, hike, ski. Maybe I'll play a little ultimate frisbee. Right. That's about as crazy as I plan to get. But stumbling around campus, our kind of freshman orientation week, and the varsity coach, had a table in the dining hall, and he was just stopping every tall guy and woman that walked by. Said, "Hey, you look like you might be a good rower. Let me get your phone number." And we didn't have email yet, so I'm dating myself a little bit. But you know, I was hungry, so I gave him my phone number and went and ate, and did not go to the orientation. It just wasn't on my radar. And later that evening, my phone rings in the dorm. I pick it up. Is this Todd Newman? Yeah. Where the fuck were you? I said,
Really?
what? What? He said, you missed practice. Be at the tanks tomorrow at 3. Click. And
Jeez.
so I went the next day because I didn't, it was the freshman coach. And,
Oh, I thought you were going to be sitting there, hang up the phone and go, what the hell are the tanks? I'd go
that's
if
what
I
I,
knew what it was.
yeah. Well, I knew enough. Like I'd had the conversation with the coach, but I went the next day because I didn't want him to call me again.
All
And
right.
it turns out that you don't necessarily need any special natural athletic talent to be a good rower. It helps to be tall, and that I am. So, uh, I didn't suck, and the kind of the positive reinforcement starts going, and you get into the training and the camaraderie of the gym and the boathouse, and it just pulls you in. So that experience really just taught me a lot and became really a core part of my identity in college. And then, I went off and some of my teammates continued on in the sport, became Olympians and national team oarsmen. So, I always was active. I didn't pursue competitive rowing seriously after college. But I cycled, I ran, I just tried to stay fit. And and then I found my way into the food industry. Eventually, I worked for large consumer product companies like Hershey and Great Dr. Pepper, and got involved in their innovation and product development programs, as well as kind of marketing these brands. And as I got more into the industry, I always sort of thought about the concept that I would have created for my college self, right? Like it would have been just awesome to have a product that was formulated for endurance training. You had protein, creatine was starting to come around, but it was the whole category of sports nutrition. And even now there are some brands that are certainly changing that. The endurance category is growing,
Hmm.
with brands like Martin's and Scratch and obviously Freak Shake. We put ourselves into that same sort of territory.
Hmm.
But we didn't have a product that was really designed for the fueling needs and the recovery needs of that type of training, that cardio intensive, VO2 max kind of training. And so fast forward, 20 something years, and I finally I left my last big corporate kind of job, and I said, all right, this is my chance. I'm not too old to do this, to give this a go. And sort of hung my entrepreneur shingle, and called up one of my partners who was a nutrition and R&D scientist at Hershey, at the Hershey Company, where we were actually doing a lot of work around the health benefits of cocoa. As you can imagine, it's kind of the dark chocolate trend
Yeah.
that came and went. And then I started reading some of the studies that we had looked at back then, 20 years earlier. And I started seeing that, there was a lot of interesting published science around these same compounds that are in cocoa subsequently, that has come out over the last decade or two. And I started sending those articles to my other partner, who's a clinical professor at UC San Diego,
Could I
and
just
saying,
interrupt?
"Hey,
Todd, could I interrupt for a
yeah,
second?
go
So
ahead,
you graduate from college, you give up
yeah,
rowing, you go
yeah,
into the food industry, and how many years later do you start like this has been gnawing at you for how long now?
25 years, 25 years,
Yeah,
25
so
years.
could,
I've been
coulda,
developing
woulda,
products for other
shoulda.
people."
And
Yeah,
was that,
believe me, I say this in jest because we all have a dream and we always kind of look back and go,
Yeah,
if we did, bless you for actually following through. But I'm just like, wow, okay. All right, so this is good.
family life, things happen, and
yeah. Can I
just didn't
also,
really.
yeah, can I also
Yeah, go
interject real
ahead.
quick? All right. So having this desire, right, to
Yeah,
knowing what an athlete needs and then having this desire, and then at the same time, slinging Dr. Pepper, right?
that's
Yeah.
right.
Was there any part of you that's like, man, what am I doing here? This is like, the opposite of really what my dream is.
The
Yeah.
antichrist, right?
Yeah,
I mean, in some ways it's the opposite just because of the category, but as a marketer, I think, consumer brands are so fun to work on because
I
we're all
bet.
consumers, right?
Yeah.
And
Hey,
it's fun even if you're working on a category that you're not personally a heavy consumer of. I mean, bringing home samples of, new flavors of Dr. Pepper and having letting the kids try it, like that's just great fun. I mean,
Uh-huh.
it's just really cool to be involved in innovation, in any category. I've always loved that part of marketing,
but
the
hey,
product
but
side of it.
but no, I'm sorry to cut you off, but a serious question, because I wouldn't
Yes.
say that I wasn't involved in endurance sports in high school. I was baseball, basketball, et cetera, right?
Yeah.
And even that's evolving, the nutrition, these guys for, to build muscle and et cetera, et cetera. But
Yeah.
as an endurance athlete at in college 25 years ago or whatever, what just for as contrast, because it obviously was something that was bugging you,
It's changed.
what did recovery look like? Was there even such a thing, or did they just say, go home, eat a good dinner and get a good night's sleep? What was there any kind of recovery protocol?
Yeah. I mean, we had very structured training cycles where obviously there were rest periods built into our week. But especially, during spring training or periods where we might be doing double sessions, you're not fully recovering. You're not able to, if you're out on the water and you're doing a 2 hour row and you're going, 18 or 20 kilometers, um, that's a pretty exhaustive bout of exercise.
Yeah.
We weren't feeding, we weren't doing intra workout feeling, just because it's hard to have that stuff in a boat.
Hmm.
Um, and you also don't really feel like eating that much when your stomach, if you're ready to throw up over the side. But so, I think recovery was just calories. It was eating a lot of calories. I remember our coach telling us, hey, you should be walking around campus with like a hard candy, or a lollipop all day long, just getting some sucrose in. And now you look at the studies, obviously the ideal way to kind of recover is with, intervals of carb feeding, right? Every half hour or so, you should be taking 1 to 1.2 grams of carbs per kilogram of body mass for somewhere between 4 to 6 hours, to fully replace glycogen. And, that's what he was telling us. They didn't explain why, but, just eat enough, darn it, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, but that
and
time it
it's
was just eat, but it wasn't necessarily eat the right things, like candy. Come on.
Oh yeah, yeah. That was literally what he told us is, don't eat it. You don't want to be sucking down hamburgers and, heavy stuff. Just have some simple sugar right after your workout, eat your lunch, eat your
Hmm.
vegetables. But it wasn't that complicated. I think, this was sort of the beginning of Power Bar. I mean, there weren't really, there were sports supplements, but in terms of nutrition, sports nutrition, there were, the category was pretty new. Yeah, Gatorade and Power Bar. Um, and what's
Okay.
Gatorade? The original concept there was it's a high carb, high, electrolyte beverage, right?
Yeah.
So
Hmm.
uh, it's funny because we catch a little. There was a study. The International Olympic Committee published a consensus statement last fall in I think it was the British Journal of Sports Medicine, and they looked at resource energy deficiency in sports, or REDS. And they did kind of a compendium of 100. They looked at 170 studies that had been done over the last 5 years. And even in elite athletes, Olympic level athletes who have nutritionists and coaches programming, what they eat, how they train, there is a pervasive under resourcing. And basically, the consensus statement says, athletes out there, you're not eating enough carbs. You're just not getting enough carbs. And I don't know if you could blame that on, was it South Beach and now keto and paleo, and people are leaning into very healthy, positive ways of eating and whole food diets, which are great, but if you're going out and you're doing a 50-mile ride, uh, you need to get carbs back on board.
Yeah, well, but you know what? I think part of that this is an interesting, I think, um, tie into our last podcast when we had the vegan cyclist on,
Yeah, yeah,
right? And it's basically like, I mean, and I've lived it, right? For me, I've gone through these periods where once I figured out, well, sugar is kind of evil, right? So I wipe sugar out of my diet, right?
yep,
And then I take carbs out of my diet. Not necessarily when I'm riding, I fuel with carbs, right? But
yep,
in between, I don't. And you just hit something that like was the light bulb went off after my ride. I take a recovery drink and I eat my regular lunch, but it's not like I'm continually loading up carbs afterwards.
yeah,
But I think that part of that comes from look at the distance runners, look at distance cyclists. We're obsessed with being thin and light,
that's right.
and carbs has that what's that the des
Stigma.
Yeah,
stigma. Thank you,
yeah.
thank you of now. And so you know that could play into it. I don't know. I'm not a psychologist. I'm not a,
I
but I think
definitely
that
think
that's got to be part of it.
I definitely agree. I think, generally health and wellness trends have moved consumers in a positive direction, right? Away from processed foods and sugar, high fructose corn syrup. That's not a bad thing. We use sugar in our products and we're not ashamed to admit it, right? And the reason is there's two reasons. It's rapidly available in
Hmm.
terms of giving your body the material it needs to start synthesizing glycogen in that golden window post workout, and it tastes fucking great. It makes products taste better, and I think it's really important when you're training that hard to reward yourself with, and again, we're not suggesting that freak shake should replace a whole food fueling
Right.
program, after a workout, but it is certainly having some sugar. And, we're talking about 30 grams or so, right? It's less than what you get in a regular soda.
I
Um,
wanted to, can you do me a favor? I'm sorry to keep, but
yeah,
this is see if my interruptions are only because I'm interested. Could
go
you
ahead.
just clarify for my simple brain? Because my wife and I are having um, this argument right now over like she likes a natural maple syrup and I'm like, give me, like log cabin, right?
You like the
And
thick
it,
stuff.
but you look and there's one that says sugar and one is fructose corn syrup. What's the
Yeah,
difference? What I mean, if you're using sugar, you say you're avoiding fructose corn syrup. What
yeah.
at the high
We use
level?
we use cane sugar. It just has a little better, I think, health halo and brand, frankly, for consumers. It's processed differently in the liver and muscles than fructose.
Hmm.
I don't want to say too much about it because I'm not a nutritionist, but
Okay.
I believe that fructose has to go through the liver and and then is processed into glycogen. In cane sugar, you have two components that are broken apart. One is becomes glucose, and the other uh, fructose that can be processed into glycogen.
Okay.
And I mean, all these materials ultimately get used to replenish your glycogen stores and your lactose stores. But at the end of the day, cane sugar tastes great, makes the product taste great, and it's effective.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So in terms of bridging to that first snack or feeding proper meal, it's just a good solution for us because it's effective and it tastes good.
If we can get back to, because I was thinking the same thing that Dave brought up just a minute ago about our last podcast, and we were talking about body dysmorphia.
Yeah,
And so I wonder, because that's the one thing that's been really surprising doing this podcast. I mean, we're almost 160 podcasts in here, and we have a lot of
good for you.
people from all over the different landscape of cycling. And it's amazing how it just keeps coming up. It's either eating disorders, or just outright not feeling fat, thinking you're fat, all these
Yeah,
different things. And the last podcast was really focused on this. But when you're talking about that IOC study and how these are not getting enough carbs in general. Do you
Yeah.
think even at the elite athlete level that there's body dysmorphia happening? Or is it just more of a dietary trend?
That's a great question. I mean, I think we're all somewhat vain as human beings.
Hmm.
Even
For
folks
sure.
who have serious training goals and should rationally be maybe less motivated by that. But I
Hmm.
mean, we're all vain, and one of the what's one of the nicest benefits of training that hard is you get a nice physique out of it, right? Like
Right.
that's a bonus.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm sure that's present. In my experience, like uh, I don't get hung up on that now because I'm too old to worry about what I look like, and I'm not trying to impress my wife anymore. Um,
You should.
but I should probably should. But I mean, even in college, like I remember, everyone sort of wants to look good.
Right.
Obviously, being a competitive athlete is a vehicle to to pursue, a physique, but that wasn't the primary goal, obviously.
Yeah.
And I think, I think the further you get in a sport, I think the more you're able to separate that, and the more you become sort of oriented towards what your fitness goals are and your competitive goals are. Um,
Hmm.
but I think for again, like we're really trying to speak to the endurance junkies out there, the folks who are looking for a co-pilot to achieve their fitness goals. And we really want to sort of separate everything we've done in terms of the way we brand the product and talk about the brand. We've been sort of intentional about not sort of associating ourselves with the get shredded culture and kind of the gym
Right.
bro culture. We want to be a little more honest about, you know, what it means to be an endurance athlete, right? It's not all glory. Like 90% of what you're doing is snotty, sweaty, tearful. Like it's just not
Yeah.
like a heroic endeavor most days, right? Like it's about grinding, and we want to validate that, right? So, um, again, that's why I think, we're leaning into just being honest about like, hey, calorie, high carbohydrate, fueling and recovery solution. It's not for, if you're going to the gym and you're doing your spin class or whatever, yeah, sure, it'll help you after a heavy bout. But if your goal is just to lose 10 pounds or, to get shredded or look a certain way, that's not necessarily our target. That's not
Hmm.
really who we're interested in speaking.
What now you so okay, that's interesting. So you talk about a spin class, right? And so if someone goes and does their hour spin class, is there a category that where endurance begins, or where the definition of endurance begins? Is it like the oh maybe the hour spin class isn't really considered endurance? Is there a time, a mileage that you say
Yeah.
this is when you really need this stuff, right?
Yeah. So if you're doing a 60-minute hit workout on a spin bike or a body pump class or you name it, right? Like you're getting up into that 75% to 80 or 90% max heart rate zone. Um, that's a strenuous workout. If you're doing it for 45 minutes to 60 minutes, you're going to pretty much be fully depleted at the end of that class, right?
Okay.
So absolutely you would benefit from a high carb, high electrolyte recovery drink like Freak Shake. It's funny though, because we detail a lot of gyms, especially in our local area out here in San Diego. And I go into the gyms and we'll do a demo, uh, at a CrossFit gym or an F45, that kind of a place, or a Orange Theory. And you look in the cooler and it's filled with like Celsius energy drinks and like weird cap. It's just, I think people are expecting their sports drinks to give you like a pump or something,
Hmm.
to give you
Give you wings.
kind of an immediate, yeah, exactly, right. People are looking for that immediate sort of sensation of efficacy. And it's funny, that's why we actually put a small amount of caffeine in our product. There's some debates that we're having about whether we want to keep that attribute, but it's not there for any physical benefit. It's there to give you a little almost subconscious nootropic bump after a hard workout, right? So you just feel you're in a good mood. but you don't find a high carb, you don't even find traditional Gatorade or Powerade in those coolers, which is really what the body is craving after 60 minutes of
Yeah.
glycogen depleting spinning.
But
Right.
I go back to what we were, the whole, I think that, again, anecdotally, and I see this just because, like, I lead a lot of group rides with don't have necessarily, they're uh, recreational cyclists, right? Which is great. But
Yeah,
a vast majority of those recreational cyclists are thinking about what is like Orange Theory. What is going to give me the energy to get through the ride? But
yeah,
they're not necessarily thinking after the ride. That's like that.
that's
Like
right.
I mean, these guys, I see them. I mean, honestly, there's a group I ride with, and their first stop without fail is a burger and beer,
Yeah,
right? And
yeah,
there are times when, and even I won't go a lot of times to the coffee shop with the people that stop after to get a coffee and Danish because I'm thinking recovery,
right.
recovery, recovery. So
Yeah,
that's why you probably don't see that kind of stuff. But no one thinks about taking that for the ride home. They think, oh,
that's right. Yeah, and actually, the thing that it just requires education. Actually, I find that the trainers and coaches in these gyms understand that.
mhm.
Um, they just don't talk about it maybe directly enough. Uh, and I'm sure it's just a little harder to sell, a high calorie drink when people are coming into the Orange Theory class with a weight loss goal or,
Right, right.
short-term goals, right? So,
Hmm.
but what you're saying is so true. I mean, if we'll hopefully get into some of the other attributes of the product that make it really unique, which is our fortification, but the adaptations to progressive workload, training cycles where you're whether you're doing VO2 max training or just progressive volume, um, that is the recovery period is when those adaptations that lead to kind of the long-term gains in muscle resilience and stamina happen, right? It happens while you're resting, and if you shortchange your recovery by not either not refueling properly or not giving your body adequate time to restore itself, um, you're minimizing the benefit of that really high quality workout that you did.
Right,
And that's
right.
absolutely true. Um, so and actually, in terms of recovery, there are some pre-workouts benefits too, but the supplemental aspect of our product is really geared around adaptation.
Yeah. So Mike, am I cutting you off or are you, because I'm
No,
like,
no,
all
I'm
right.
good. Yeah.
Like, so it's interesting because I see that it is called fuel, right? And I think
Yep.
you've mentioned a few times, and this is just educate me on this because and hopefully get into some of the fortification things, right? But I see fuel when I was reading up on it, and I said I thought one thing, and then I start reading 3-to-1 carbs to protein, and I immediately go, okay, that's the formula for recovery.
It is, yeah.
But you said some people are some people are taking it prior to a workout.
It's true. Yeah. So we are shifting our positioning of the 3-to-1, the protein product, to be more explicitly about recovery. Initially, I mean, the data will show that there are benefits to having these flavonoids that we supplement with in your system before, during, and after. But
Okay.
when you look at sort of the universal needs for the macronutrient components, the electrolytes and the carbs, and the 3-to-1, carb to protein ratio, that is really kind of universally beneficial, regardless of how whether you're elite or a novice athlete after, in the post workout period. Some people don't want to have protein, in their stomach before, during. We have a very low protein level, so we have riders that are using it during long workouts and love it just because of the variety and it tastes good. I mean, there's a
Hmm.
limit to how many gels you can suck down.
Yeah.
Um,
Tell me about
and
it.
I have a friend, actually was a former teammate of mine, very high level rower, went on to national team kind of level of competition, and now he's a master cyclist over in Switzerland, and he's using Freak Shake as an intra workout fuel on
Hmm.
his long rides. And he's seen his FTP, his kind of benchmark FTP increased by about 30% since he started training with it. And he's eliminated a lot of the kind of the decoupling effects that happen sort of in hour 4 to 6 of a long ride. um, I don't know how to explain that, to be honest, but he's attributed it to sort of he saw that happen pretty quickly once he started introducing these flavonoids into his longer rides. So
So
there are a
to
number.
be clear, is he taking it during, or you said prior to the ride he takes it?
He takes it during and after.
During and after. Okay.
Wow.
Yep.
Okay.
And we have other athletes. It's gotten a pretty warm reception in the hybrid athlete community. So if you think about kind of the high rocks, fit kind of endurance offshoot of the CrossFit culture, where they're doing a lot of hit kind of style workouts.
Hmm.
Um, that group tends to like it free, which I
Hmm.
don't know if that's just sort of how the mindset of going into an hour or a 90-minute session that's going to be really intense and having like everything on board for that effort. But we have a lot of great anecdotal results in that population pre. So I can get into what we think is happening, with the supplementation pre and post. But generally speaking, the 3 to 1 you mentioned, carbs to protein, anywhere in the range of 3 to 4 grams of carbs to 1 gram of protein, there's good evidence that shows that optimizes glycogen synthesis. So, especially if you're doing double sessions, you don't have a full 24-hour recovery period, and you want to have peak performance tomorrow, that's a good rule of thumb. Uh, with your
Hey,
post-workout fueling is to add a little bit of carbs, not a little bit of protein, not to overdo it though.
hey,
Yeah.
Todd, can I interject real quick? So, I mean, 30% increase in FTP. I mean, I mean, we would have people running and buying this
It's
shit
massive.
left and
Yeah,
right, right? So,
massive.
was this an
Shh,
established?
let's not publish this one and keep this to just to Mike and I.
Yeah,
And
it's a
then all
little
of a sudden
late.
we go, how the
Well,
hell did
he's
these guys get so fast?
Yeah, there'd
he's
I
be
love
he's
it.
doping.
incredibly he's incredibly disciplined on the bike, and
Was this
he's training in the Alps
yeah, well, awesome. I'd love
at
to join
altitude,
him.
right? So
Yeah, but
yeah, and
is it
he's
an
got a program.
established FTP? Like, let me
Yes.
just like to qualify that statement, right? So let's say he's got this FTP that he's had for maybe a year or two, or it fluctuates a little bit here or there depending on several factors. And then he makes this adjustment to pre, during, and post, and then he has a 30% increase in FTP.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a wild kind
It
of
wasn't
claim.
overnight, but he's seen that improvement over a 6 month period where he's got a training peaks coach, and this is a
Mhm.
very disciplined rider who has the resources to he's got hard fitness goals in mind. But I think what was interesting was, I shipped him out some product, and he started training with it. And almost right away, his first comment was, "It tastes really good, and I need some variety on my long rides." And so I think, part of it is just the variety that having another product in your fueling kit provides, is just enables you to maybe get a little more carbs in
Mhm.
during a long outing. But the fact that he's, anecdotally, he saw decoupling kind of the decoupling problem just disappear almost immediately when he introduced it. I think there are it could have to do with just having more carbs. It could have to do with our supplementation, because there's good evidence that you have a vasodilatory benefit from the epicatechin in our drinks, so promoting blood flow. There's really, really good data that shows that these flavonoids are correlated with better oxygen and fat utilization. So before you get to that anaerobic threshold, your ability to metabolize fat is sort of your secret weapon, right? Because you don't start going anaerobic and developing the lactic acid kind of side effects, right? If you can increase your output a little more using fat stores before you kind of switch over to glycogen as the predominant source, um, that's going to benefit you, right? You're going to have some increased endurance before you cross that threshold. And both epicatechin and quercetin, which is in our capsules, uh, are associated with improved mitochondrial function. So the ability to metabolize fat and oxygen both more effectively. And in fact, these compounds are associated with an increase in mitochondrial density. So there are studies showing that even in sedentary consumers, um, a course of supplementation is associated with increased muscle mass and improved mitochondrial function, mitochondrial density. So more mitochondria in each muscle cell translates to your ability to utilize more oxygen, fat,
So
and
hold on.
glycogen.
So the couple things. So you've mentioned
Yeah.
things that are in our product, flavonoids and you said
Yes.
some other stuff. Are these the stuff that are in the capsules, or are they stuff that you add, or are they in protein and carbs in general, or there's stuff
We
that
add
you add?
this is sort of our unique point of difference. And
Okay.
sorry, I could go down the rabbit hole pretty quickly because I find it so interesting.
Yeah.
This is where the journey from my days at Hershey with my partner, who's the nutritionist, he's a plant biochemist by training. We were looking at these same compounds in cocoa and seeing all these interesting health benefits. Um, we went back to that same science, which has improved even since we were looking at it, 2 decades ago, and then bringing my other partner in to say, hey, am I reading these studies correctly? The clinical professor guy said, Byron, um, I'm going back and looking at this data, and I want to make sure as a marketer that I'm reading this correctly. He's like, no, that can't make sense. What you're saying can't possibly be true about mitochondria, about oxygen fat utilization. That sounds ridiculous. And a week later, he comes back with 80 studies, and he said, how could I not know about this? This is incredible. I said, okay, let's make the product. Let's go and source these ingredients. So to answer your question, Dave, yes, we supplement these ingredients in our drinks and our capsules. Right now, the drinks just are supplemented with epicatechin. We're going to be adding quercetin as well, a form of quercetin called isoquercetin.
Okay.
So we'll
So
have both molecules.
that would you say is your secret sauce? Because I'm just
Yes.
two points of reference. Okay. And Mike was not nice enough to share the freak shake. So I have
I'll send you some.
my energy fuel is all carbs and not protein. So that's why I'm intrigued, right? The brand
Yep.
I use, I'm very intrigued by protein as a part of a pre and during thing. And I would
Mhm.
say that my recovery is got that same 3-to-1 formula. But what I'm hearing is that this is your secret sauce, right? This is
That's correct.
your kind of differentiation, these things that they're not part of proteins and carbs. They're just stuff that you guys, your research has said will do X, Y, and Z.
Yeah, it's not even a very well kept secret. I'm surprised that these micronutrients haven't been more broadly commercialized.
Mhm.
You can find epicatechin. Quercetin is more common as an ingredient supplement, but uh, yeah, I mean, they're just plant extracts. We get our epicatechin from green tea, and the isoquercetin that we will be adding to our drinks in our next run comes from the pagoda flower, which I couldn't even tell you. I think it's a flowering tree
Mhm.
that is abundant in these compounds, and they belong to a class of
It's
micronutrients called flavonoids.
epicatechin, and what?
Epicatechin and quercetin, Quercetin.
Okay.
So quercetin is known as sort of the pigmentation nutrient. It's in a lot of dark fruits, dark leafy green vegetables. It's in cocoa, it's in tea. Um, and if you're eating healthy, you're getting, a small dose of epicatechin in your diet. But when you take an acute dose, we use 100 milligrams. Um, and this is true for quercetin in a higher dose. Most of the studies go up to about 1,000 milligrams or a gram or so. Um, you actually get some immediate benefits in terms of uh, the cardiovascular blood flow benefits, as well as uh, some of the mitochondrial adaptations that I mentioned before.
Huh. Interesting. Interesting.
Yeah,
Well,
I'm sorry, Dave, but it is
no,
interesting to introduce protein into your fueling because, you know, I know myself and a lot of other athletes have a hard time getting enough protein. You have to really focus on protein to hit the number that you should be hitting, ideally to recover and go the next day. And so the idea that you could now interject protein into, on a long ride, I might have 6 bottles of water, um,
Yeah.
or scratch or whatever I'm using, and then if all of a sudden that had protein in it, that could really help in trying to achieve this overall intake for protein.
I mean, yeah, I mean, just as a point of reference, I mean, I have a protein shake in the morning, right?
Mhm.
That's essentially my breakfast. I have a recovery drink, and then I go in the evening. Every night I have whey protein drink, and I'm still coming up way short of what I'm supposed to get from a protein thing, right? And I've added up the chicken breast I eat at night. I've added up all the stuff, and I like, what do I got to do to get enough protein? This is, it's incredible.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be curious. I don't have the occasion to use it during workouts very often. My routine is a little more compact. I'm not going out on long rides these days, where I could test that. But I do use it if I'll go. I'm rowing again. So part of my journey back, into the sport has been to sort of make sure that I could speak as a user
Uh-huh.
to the product as we were getting ready to launch last winter. So found myself joining a boat club here in San Diego and getting back into rowing pretty hardcore.
Nice.
And it's been great. But I will use it immediately before a hard workout. So if I'm going to go like hunting for a PR on the erg one day, or we're going to do, really strenuous workout on the water, I'll take it 20, 30 minutes. I'll have a shake before. And I find that, we've got 11 to 12 grams of protein in there. It's not enough to upset my stomach. But I haven't tried it during workout. I just have that one anecdote. My old buddy who's riding out in the Alps, and he's loving it as an intra
Yeah.
workout. So yeah, I think it's one of those things. Certainly whey protein gets its ding sometimes for creating some bloat. I mean, the reason we use our protein profile is modeled actually after dairy, for a couple reasons, but we end up having 80%. So there's about 11 to 12 grams per serving, right? 80% of that's casein, 20% of that is whey.
Okay.
So and the reason is, whey is the reason you get the bloat is it's digested faster than any other complete protein. Casein has a slower GI profile, so it's a little more slow to get absorbed. So between the two, we have a nice sort of blend of a smooth delivery in the gut. So blending sort of a little bit fast uptake of the whey with complete uptake, a slower digesting casein. Um, so I don't think it's too objectionable to the tummy, because we don't have a
Mm.
lot, and we have this particular blend that we're using of isolates. But
Yeah.
I would encourage you, Dave, to try it. I'd love to hear how you find
Yeah,
it.
well, that's what I'm writing all this stuff down. So yeah, let me get my hands on it. I'm very curious. I'm very curious about the pills as well.
Yeah,
Help
yeah.
me, and I want to try to bridge a gap here,
Mhm.
between, again, I don't mean to be obsessed with just carbs as an energy and protein carbs as a thing, but he mentioned he does it because it stops this decoupling. What are you saying by decoupling? What is
Yeah.
that's not a term I mean we use in my cycling circles. So
Yeah. So decoupling is, I don't want to butcher this too badly, but my understanding of it is it's the effect of, as you become fatigued, where typically, you increase exertion, your heart rate goes up, your output goes up. There's some linear kind of relationship between effort and output, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
Decoupling, it just describes uh, the phenomena where as you're fatiguing, you can increase heart rate, but output doesn't go up. So basically, it's the enemy of a speed on a long ride, right? In the later part of that ride. So what he's saying is, especially when he was doing longer rides up in the mountains, he would typically find that he'd start to see decoupling in his output. So the relationship between heart rate and output in the last 2 hours of a long ride. So hour 5 to 7, let's say. And he claimed that once he started using Freak Shake on his, in addition to his other fueling products during those rides, that almost immediately disappeared. And again, I'm not sure how we explain that. Like there's also hopefully a strong placebo, since he's an old friend of mine, wanting it to work.
Right.
But you can't underestimate the power of a placebo, right?
For
We
See,
all
real.
see,
have our favorite product.
my decoupling happens right at about Ranger grade. That's when I start to decouple.
It's a local climb we have. Yeah. He's only about halfway at Ranger grade. Yeah.
No.
Yeah. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
so
Okay.
I just thought
I've
that was a
seen the
great
decoupling.
anecdote.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I've
we've
seen
all
it in
been there.
person. It's not pretty. Yeah.
Followed by F-bombs.
Hang on, guys. I just got to grab my power cord here.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Do your thing. Yeah. Well, it's going to be interesting to try it as an on bike, fueling source. I'll try that next time I go. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I got a tub here for you.
All
I
right.
find that, yeah, what I advise people who are trying the product for the first time, kind of experiment with using it in different ways. I say just try the drink first as a recovery uh drink, right? Following a strenuous workout, try that for a week or two, and then start experimenting with with if you want to try a pre-workout before a higher intensity shorter session, that might be interesting.
Mhm.
And then I would add the capsules in as sort of almost just a vitamin routine. I take one a day.
Mhm.
And
I'd love to get my hands on those. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
we'll get you some.
That sounds really interesting because those things that, I mean, if I've never heard of them, I'm guessing that those are not big data points for other supplements I take. So to get something that's missing, and especially like you're saying, I think the blood flow issue, that's like intriguing to me.
It's
Hmm.
pretty interesting. Yeah. I think, obviously as we age, our cardiovasculature becomes less plastic, less flexible. And we lose, our metabolism declines with age too. We lose mitochondrial function just as a natural process of the aging. So there's really, we just actually received a grant out here from the university to look at we're going to study our capsules in elderly, 60 plus consumers and elderly. I don't want to offend anyone by calling you elderly if you're that.
Well, you
We're all
just
getting
did,
there.
Todd.
Leave. Where's the
Yes,
leave
you
button? I
just did.
gotta leave because I
Uh-huh.
gotta get. Yeah, because I got the blue
Uh-huh.
plate special to go to. My
Yeah.
dinner starts at 4:30. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's right.
So
Yeah. So we're gonna be looking at what happens to inflammation and mitochondrial function in older consumers, in older people
Uh-huh.
who may not be highly conditioned. So I actually think that there's good data to suggest it's very hard to do a study in elite athletes, right? They're hard to recruit. You need a lot of them to get a significant result because their baseline is very high in terms of their function.
Yeah.
So to get a significant data point, you need to recruit a lot of them, and they're hard to recruit. So by looking at older athletes, um, we're going to be able to kind of do a pilot scale study and really understand how what the benefits of these compounds really are in terms of the specific product that we're making, and being able to kind of directly correlate. So right now, all of our R&D is based on published clinical data, and we're obviously being careful about what data we use and what ingredients we use as well. But it'll be our first sort of foray into like our own R&D pipeline. So
Yeah.
that's really exciting. But to get that grant, there has to be enough good data to suggest that these micronutrients have a lot of potential, and they've been studied for years. They just haven't been broadly commercialized.
Hey, I'm not casting doubt on this anyways. I just want to add some street cred here. So tell us about the
Yeah,
other guys on the team, right? So I
yeah,
just so that I mean, you've got like reading your profiles, I mean, you
got
got
a great team.
some pretty,
Heavy hitters.
pretty yeah, and knowledgeable
Yeah,
guys there, as opposed to somebody that's just thinking something up in the garage and wants to put a cool name on it and sell. So I mean, let's let's tell us about the rest of the team and what the company looks like now.
yeah, yeah. So I think that's the benefit of waiting this long into my career to kind of try to become an entrepreneur. Um, if I had done this in my 20s, I would have been just another athlete, putting a cool brand around whatever ingredients I thought were in vogue. But the benefit of working for these large companies, and I think they do get a bad rap, the food industry. They have great science. They're trying to operate, from the right place in terms of health and wellness, and when they're making a claim, they're really backing that up. There, you can bet there's millions of dollars of research and evidence behind anything that they're saying. So that taught me to be cautious and a bit conservative. And I really learned how these companies approach the science through people like Dave Stewart, who's our R&D advisor. He's a trained plant biochemist, and he's retired now, but we worked together at Hershey back in, I don't know, 2008. And he actually started the Hershey Center for Health and Wellness, for Hershey Center for Nutrition, and ran that as the director for 23 years
Which
and
sounds like
became
an
sort of
oxymoron, but you know.
right. Yeah. I said, Dave, what is a plant biochemist? Um, I don't remember
Yeah.
what he said, but he's a chemist and he studies plants.
Uh-huh.
So, he's able to really uh, sort of analyze at the molecular level what we're putting into the products, and understand, how is this going to interact in the body. Um, and he's a key part of how we're sourcing our ingredients and doing that diligence to make sure we're getting high quality ingredients that are what we proclaim that they are. And then Byron has been sort of Dr. Ferguson, I should call him. He's a clinical professor at UC San Diego out here, and a good friend. um, he's just been a sounding board for a lot of the data that I started looking at early on, and then he's sort of taken over the grant side of our R&D program, and then he makes sure that all of our marketing claims are up above board.
Mhm.
So Byron's just kind of, I think, the voice of reason, and he's able to translate the science into consumer speak to a certain extent. Yeah, and so those two guys have been just phenomenal allies and cheerleaders in this process, and
Wow.
I do think they bring us some credibility.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, that's it's yeah, for sure. I mean, just looking at their bios, it's impressive stuff. And I liked what you said about the responsible sourcing.
Yeah,
Like I think of the recent onslaught of everyone's the miracle drug CBD, right?
yeah,
Yeah, and then everyone's going to get CBD, and I just have to imagine like there's got to be a lot of shit out there that says CBD, and according to the FDA, it qualifies as CBD, but it just can't be as good as some of the other stuff. I think there's just too many people that rush to market too quickly. And now it's all over. It's in every store. It's in every whatever. And again, I
yeah,
have no evidence to back it up, but I guess there's got to think there's a lot of shit on the market, right?
Well,
And
and I'm always
yeah,
skeptical of products like that where they claim to do everything basically. Oh, you got anxiety, take some CBD. Oh, you got a sore
Yeah.
back, take some CBD.
Yeah,
You
exactly.
know, you want to run faster, take some CBD. It's like, come on.
Yeah,
I
your
mean,
dog,
yeah,
your dog is
I'm
nervous during
gullible.
a thunderstorm. Give
Yeah,
the dog
right,
CBD.
right.
Believe that the only clinical indication for CBD right now is childhood epilepsy. So that's uh, the one
Confirmed.
indication
Yeah.
that where there's clinical evidence. Yeah, all the rest, I haven't seen any data to support it, and I don't think the industry really wants to invest in it because it's too good, right? Everyone's
Yeah.
just believes in the magic of it, and
Right.
if you start buying the studies, paying to do the research, you might not get the result that you're hoping to get, right?
Yeah.
So, um, yeah. So for us, I think the coming from big packaged food where they're very risk averse in their sourcing and their science and their claims that they're going to make. That was great training for how I wanted to approach this as an entrepreneur. I think we had some debates about whether we wanted to pursue a supplement strategy because there's a little bit of a negative perception to the category because I think there are a lot of actors in the category who are kind of in that gray area that might be a little too footloose, fancy free with the claims they're making.
Hmm.
Um, and we're obviously going to be scrutinized against that landscape because we are a supplement label. But I think with these two partners on board, we've taken great pains to avoid some of those pitfalls of just pursuing kind of the easy marketing strategy and the just throwing whatever trending ingredient you know is getting clicks into the witch's brew, so to speak. So we've been very focused on these two compounds, and that's because there's great published
Great
clinical
data to
data to
support
support
it.
them.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
great safety track records, by the way, too. That's the other thing. There's good data on a lot of supplements out there that might have a couple spotty safety issues, right, in terms of toxicity or side effects. So that was the other piece of this that was really important, looking for any kind of adverse events that are associated, with
S-
any compound that we're going to put in our product.
So what you're saying is that when your first Freak Shake commercial comes on TV, the disclaimer is not going to be longer than the commercial itself.
Well, we're still going to make those disclaimers. If you look at our label, it's just a liability thing. Our factories won't, we can't print a label that's going to make that doesn't make those disclaimers. Just they have to be there because it is a
Yeah.
supplement. But
Sure.
um, but yeah, I mean, rest assured, like I feel very confident in what we're doing, that it's safe and effective.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, look, we spent a lot of time talking about the product and the details within the product. And
Yep.
but let's shift gears a little bit here. So now when previously in the food industry, you launched some products. These products have slogans or they have songs attached to them, like who does, I mean, I'm a pepper, you're a pepper,
Yeah.
there's like all kinds of, so with your background, you got Freak Shake. So let's hear it. You got a freestyle rap or something to go along with
I
Freak
wish-
Shake or
Yeah, I wish I was like just a management guy. I wasn't the creative. I should think of that. Yeah, I mean, right now we're kind of leaning into the endurance junkie idea, right? We really like the way I would sort of describe our brand intent is we want to be a brand that endurance junkies feel validates the work that they put into their fitness, to their training program. Whether you're 80 or you're 18, whether you're an Olympian or a novice, if you're out there and you've got serious fitness goals, endurance goals in front of you, we really want to validate the hard work that goes into that by being kind of your nutrition co-pilot. And I think, my hope is as the brand evolves that we're just more honest than the category at large about what that involves. And we celebrate kind of the bad days as well as the good days.
Mhm.
It's all part of the journey.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, it is
Yeah.
weird.
so I-
It is weird with nutrition, diets. Um, I mean, geez, you can throw religion in there. I mean, there's a
yeah.
bunch of topics where there's a lot of hyperbole, and then these trends, things get hot, and then it dies off, and then so you could have you throw politics in there too, right? There's just these different camps that people get into, and then it makes it hard for somebody like Dave or myself, because we're pretty gullible, both of us, to really kind of like find our way through all the minutia to really what's real, and I mean, I've never read a scientific study myself, full disclosure, and honestly don't even know if I could understand it if I did, but yeah, so it's like a lot of trial and error, I think, for most cyclists and endurance athletes in general, just trying to figure out, like, what do I want? Am I going to buy this ketone thing for $3.49, a little for
Yeah.
2 ounce bottle, or do I just stay with what I got or what I've been doing that works
It's
for me?
funny. I mean, how do you discover new products? Are you obviously, aside from, meeting people on your podcast who are
Mhm.
selling one, what is it that turns you on to a new product that sort of opens the door to trying something that's not in your kit today? What's the
Yeah.
trigger for that?
Well, I mean, I'll speak to this a little bit, because I recently tried some goo Roctane, right, which has a lot of carbs in it, and I had not been, and a lot of calories too. So that's kind of nice on the bike on these long days, long hot days. If you can get a lot of carbs and a lot of calories in a bottle and you're not really eating anything, that's pretty good. So we have on the podcast also a friend, but he works for Goo, and so we did a group ride, and I had been reading about it, so I asked him about it, and he said, "Look, I'm not going to get all evangelical on you, He says, but I use it. I love it. It really does help me feel. He says on the ride it's good, but post ride, I feel like I can go on do a big hundo hard ride and still be productive the rest of the day because I'm not so depleted. And that's something where oh, I struggle with from time to time."
Oh, where'd he go?
He just disappeared. Yeah, my Roctane story was killing him, I think.
Yeah. Oh, he mentioned goo. I gotta go now.
Yeah, right. Oh well, yeah. How about you, Dave? We'll kind of keep it going. What do you how do you go about trying new stuff?
Well,
Where does it come
this
from?
is why I'm asking these questions, because uh I'm very set in my ways, and I
Hmm.
don't try new things.
Right.
So
He's back.
I'm back. Yeah, my computer was unplugged and I can't find my power cord, so I'm
Oh,
on my phone
geez.
now.
All right. Well, so I had just
interesting.
I was oh, go ahead. I was asking Dave about how he did. Like I explained, like mine,
Yeah,
we do get set in our ways. Like, you know, over time, we had Steve Bourne on from Hammer Nutrition, and I've used their stuff. But honestly, it just didn't, I don't know. I never really felt like this was the right stuff for me. And
yeah,
so I kept searching. And then, so I've kind of settled in now on Scratch and the Roctane. So if I'm
yeah,
going out big, long, hard day, I'm taking Roctane. If I'm going for my usual, I'm just going to do my Scratch. And it's stuff I've used for years. The Roctane's new, but the Scratch I've used for years, and it agrees with my stomach. And that's the biggest thing, is just trying to be able to not have that chemical mouth that
yeah.
you get,
Yep.
And so while you tapped out, I asked Dave about his experience and how he did, and so go ahead, Dave. Sure.
so because I'm elderly, thank you, Todd, over 60.
Oh, you're never going to
I,
hear the end of that, Dave.
I've no, I've increasingly got more and more set in my ways, and so my dietary habits
And
they're
grumpier.
very routine. It's routine, right? And so I don't deviate from it. I don't, because it's working. And
Yeah.
but I will tell. I want to bring this full. It's working, and until it's not, I'm not making any adjustments. Like, Michael roll his eyes right now, but on a Friday night, I know I have a big ride on Saturday. Okay. But I have 2 beers.
Oh my
And someone will
God.
say, well, you're look at it, there he goes. But until I go out on that Saturday ride and can't keep up, then I'm not, you know what I mean? Then I'm not changing anything.
Then you'll go down to one beer.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But the point is it's so it's working, and the stuff that I take in, the time at which I take it, and the products that I use is working. Having said that, I've been obsessing over this thing and the idea of protein in during. Okay. Now, I will say that in the interest of full disclosure, I have for years, and not just because he's been on the pod, I have for years used Hammer. Okay. And I used their Heed for my energy, and I used their Recoverite they have one product which is called Perpetuum. Okay. And that was always described to me as that's your real endurance. That's your 100-mile, your triathlete, take that, right? That's what you want to take. And the average ride for me is 50 miles. Yes, it's endurance, but it's not a century. I just quickly looked up the ingredients, and they do, in fact, have protein in their Perpetuum. I'm sure they don't have that other secret sauce stuff. So I'm not selling Hammer versus yours. I'm just saying I think you're onto something. And now I'm thinking about protein during, and I may be making a change to what you said, to experiment, see what happens.
Try it out. Yeah.
Yeah.
I
See,
think, for
go ahead.
folks who are, so we have we have been debating just in terms of how we want to go to market as a new brand. And do we lean into the masters athlete community, right? They're generally have maybe more resources to invest in nutrition products, and but like you said, might be more fixed in their habits, what they believe to work. So it might be harder to open that door to a new product.
Mhm.
Or, do we lean into younger athletes who are sort of still developing their nutrition and fitness routines, but may have less discretionary income to buy a premium product, right? Whether it's Free Shake or any of them. And so I think we're still having that debate. It's unclear, right? There's some puts and takes with both sides of that. But I do think, especially for older athletes, which I count myself among them, I think the benefits would be felt more acutely compared to a younger athlete who's very conditioned and, um,
Hey, they
probably
can do
could eat a
anything.
pizza just as well as,
Yeah, yeah, I
Yeah.
think I tend to agree with you, right? And I would, because they don't, again, I can get 3 good rides in, and I'm great. And on the, it used to be 3 great rides, and on the 4th day I was a little tired. Now it's like 2 good rides, and on the 3rd day I'm a little bit tired, right? So I think that there's more of a need for that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? This is the younger guys is just, I mean, I talk about having 2 beers. They're probably going out and getting shit faced and waking up the next day and not,
Yeah.
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 Maybe for you, Dave, I might suggest you try the capsules first, since
Yeah.
it sounds like you've got your fuel. I mean,
No, I know. I want to try. No, you got me.
Yeah.
Don't, because I will honestly say that no, you've also got me going. It's something that Mike said, and you've got me going. Why I want to try yours is, if you're going to be doing it, taste is critical, right? And you're saying that's one of your things is taste. And I haven't heard. Yeah, and that's one of the issues with me getting stuff down is, here I am. It's hot. I'm riding, and I want something that's going to really taste good and kind of satiate me in that sense, right?
Yeah.
So I no, I think that's a big play on your part as well.
Yeah. I
Mike
do
mentioned, what do you call it? The
the
chemical
chemical
mouth, or
mouth. Yeah.
yeah.
I think the masters category, because I mean, to your point, I mean, and Dave said he's kind of stuck in his ways, but now he's open, right? But I think as masters, we're constantly reminded that we're masters, by the young,
Yeah.
the young person who did get shit faced the day before, and he's out there on the hundo and he's pushing it up the 12% grade, like it's all good. And you're just reminded, and it's like I'm always looking for something. Like I don't even know. Like my legs are sore all the time, right? So I'm always trying to tweak. Can I try this? Can I try that? Within reason. If it's too expensive, Roctane to me is right on the cusp of being, for the amount of riding I do, that's right on the, I can't make it my everyday. Even though
Yeah.
it tastes great, it agrees with me, and it has what I need. I can do it with scratch for a lot less for my regular day to day. And so
Yeah.
I feel like there's a tipping point there. But I think most masters, if you're being honest with themselves, it's a sliding scale. Age is undefeated. You're trying to defeat that as much as you can. And if you can get some kind of assist, find something new at 63 years old, Dave. I mean, you know what I mean? That could
Yeah.
be a game changer.
I've
I mean,
really
Todd's
I've really
rowing again.
fallen in love with competitive masters sports though, honestly, in the last year, and didn't expect that. And what I've realized is if you're, I go out and I'm rowing sometimes with guys who are in their 70s now
Yeah.
and just getting after it still. Sure, their output's not what it was when they were 50 or 40, but the funny thing is they're the hardest core sons of bitches out there. Like if you're still training every day at
Yeah.
5 in the morning, and getting up and you love it that much, you've outlasted all those 20-year-olds who were kicking that are kicking your ass on the ride, right? But like
Yeah.
most of them won't be around in 40 years.
Yeah, no, I,
So
Yeah.
like I feel like it's even more competitive in some ways at this age because you're in the company of like the serious committed freaks.
well,
That's right.
that's why
Right.
two points that I've been trying to interject this. Well, first of all, cycling got super, super, super competitive for me when I moved to the 45 and above category. I'm thinking, okay, I'm moving up there with the old guys, and they were faster
Yeah.
because they've been doing it for so long, right? And
And their
now,
kids are grown.
yeah,
In the 30s, you're dealing with young kids and trying to still maintain this career path or this racing thing was
right.
a lot harder than when you're in your 40s.
That's right.
Kids, yeah, the kids are older,
And I got to be honest, and now they tell me who's lining up at the 60 plus fields. I'm like, I'm not going. I know those guys. I'm not even going.
Right.
Yeah.
But the other thing is, which I think you said, which at first I kind of grappled with it, and I'm like freak shake, right? But then I read your description, and it got me thinking, like, if we're sitting with my daughter, and someone looks at me, I'm sitting there, and one of her friends goes, "You ride 100 miles?" She'll go, "Yeah, he's a freak."
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
seriously. Then I think I ride a lot. Someone asked me about Mike. I go, "Yeah, he's a freak." You know? No, and it's funny. And
The
I
name
think
is good.
I think our world is within cycling, but then I start looking at, the master swimmers
Yep.
that I've met through my wife. And
Yeah.
then these people that are still out running, a friend of mine's wife, she's now finished all the major marathons, right? Like Tokyo and wherever but that was her thing. Like this is what she does. And I'm like, man, she's a freak, right?
Yeah.
So that's our mindset. It really is.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You
we
know?
love the swimming community. There's a great triathlete community out here and open water swimming community as well in San Diego. And we've been doing events. This is the season for all the open water races and big events. And that's just a great market for an endurance product like this
Oh
as
yeah.
well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's,
Well, we did have somebody from the senior games on the podcast before. And
Oh, cool.
that's kind of an interesting mind shift, for somebody like I'm in my 50s, Dave's in his 60s, making the shift to I'm going to compete in the senior games, that's a different mindset than racing,
Like
just
the old McLaren.
going to your
Yeah.
regular race, your road race or
Yeah.
whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But yeah, it's interesting. You do see it is motivating and inspiring to see these people, like you say, in the 70s that are still getting after it. And I always think like as you get older, like if I only had the discipline that I have today when I was in my 20s, right?
Right.
Holy smokes, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just feel like as you get older, that funnel, you just keep funneling. It's like, okay, I got to get rid of this. I've got to get rid of this. I've got to get serious about my sleep. I've got to,
Yep.
I no more alcohol for me. Sorry, Dave. You just start cutting all this stuff out just so you can get that funnel. And
Yeah.
it's just like it's
It's
a
easier.
it
Yeah.
it makes it every one of those things that you can get rid of or add, like improve sleep or whatever, they do really help you in the long run, even though Dave thinks the 2 beers are not slowing him down, which is hilarious. You know, but anyway, but you got to enjoy life too, because we are not
Yeah.
elite athletes. I mean, despite what we may think, we are not elite athletes. So you know, how serious do you want to take it? And it is important to go out and have fun. And if you enjoy it with your spouse, you go have a couple beers and I mean, that part of life is very important, obviously.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
So,
I think what I've learned from competing, in my 50s now is what you get out of it is still the same as in your 20s, which
mhm.
was that kind of joy of discovering your limits, right? Like I find the thing that most rewarding about this type of training and competing, in a sport like rowing or cycling is just testing those limits is still fun. And
Yeah.
like, can I get through this? And it's so rewarding when you do. And you're always going to have an expectation, although that bar keeps maybe getting lower as you age, right? There's always going to be an expectation or a PR that you can work towards and beat. And the payoff is still the same,
Oh, yeah.
at 50 as it was at 18.
It might even be better
Yeah,
because you've lived a little. You know,
that's right.
we had a guest on recently, a younger person. He did Unbound XL. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but it's 353 miles, 19,000 feet of climbing. It's an
Wow.
insane kind of endeavor. And he said something that just, I feel like it summed it all up for like a lot of us in this endurance space. He said, I wanted to do something that I didn't know if I could do.
Yeah.
Right? I think that that's something that really fuels us, in a lot of ways. And whether you're, rowing, trying to hit a certain time from,
Yep.
years ago, or if you're trying to ride for, try to do an Everest or something wild, I think that certainly for me, that is something that I've never really articulated it that way before. But as soon as he said it, I'm like, yes, that's it, you
So
know?
agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed. And I think that speaks to what we were talking about, earlier in terms of do you go for younger or older, right? Like, for me at this point, like I know I wimped out yesterday, Mike, and I didn't do your
Yeah.
big ride.
Yes, you did.
However, oh yeah. But I like, there's just things now, like my goals are loftier. My goals are like they're not the 50-mile road race because I know I do that. I do 50 miles every Saturday and another 40 every Sunday, right? 100 miles, well, that's a little bit different. I mean, my mind starts shifting. We had a wedding that was 110 miles away from here. And my wife looked at me, she goes, "You're planning on riding up there, aren't you?" Like, and it
That's
turned
a
out
good
to be
woman.
105 degrees and I decided not to do it. But yeah, that's the way I start to think now. Things like Mike just said, things that I don't, I never thought I could do, and something that's going to actually push me beyond where I thought I could go. So
Yeah, that idea, there's a Japanese word for it. There's a tradition, I'm blanking on what it's called, of
Mm.
doing they would stand under a ice cold waterfall and you have someone that's telling you when you can stop. And you don't know how long that'll be. And it's I guess it's excruciating, right? And it's this tradition of doing something really hard. Um I met a former SEAL. So San Diego has a very
Oh yeah.
large military community, and the Naval Special Warfare Command, where the SEALs and the special operators all train, is out here. And we've been trying to get Freak Shake into their performance center, to get some feedback on the product. And so this guy was helping me out getting into that program, and he's talking about this tradition of, like, he says once a year, it's very much in the SEAL tradition too, of like, you test yourself. He once a year, usually around New Year's, he'll design an excursion or a workout that is just really hard. And he says, I always try to pick something that I'm not necessarily good at, and I have a 50-50 chance of completing and 100% chance of not dying. And then he goes and does it, right? Like,
Yeah.
so this year he said, I'm gonna take a paddle board down to the border in Tijuana and paddle it all the way up to Camp Pendleton.
Whoa.
Yeah.
I think it's got to be over 40 miles at least
Oh, yeah.
on a paddleboard. I'm like,
Yeah, have
Yeah.
at it. Have at it and drink. Have at it and drink this, my friend.
that's
Yeah.
right. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's Misogi, by the way.
Misogi.
A
Thank you.
Masogi.
Yes.
Oh, good day.
Yeah.
All right. Hey, before we let you get out of here, and we appreciate your time, but we had a former guest of the pod on, Matt Fitzgerald, and he wrote this book, How Bad Do You Want It? Are you familiar with that book by any chance?
No.
Okay, so in the book, though, he chronicles like these different stories of athletes that have seen adversity and they've overcome adversity. But there was this story of these, when you're talking about rowers and how this guy was recruiting tall people. There was a story in there about these short rowers. And they, I think it was was it New Zealand or was it Australia?
They were England. They were England.
Oh, that's right. They were from England.
I think so. I think they were England. Yeah.
And they won the gold medal, I think multiple times. And they just win it against all the thought bubble that surrounds rowing. These two individuals were able to overcome all of that, and it was really interesting. Do you happen to know who I don't remember their names or anything.
I don't. That doesn't ring a bell. Was it modern era or was it old time?
No, it was modern era.
Modern
Yeah.
era.
Yeah.
Interesting. I'm gonna have to research that because
it might have been
they
80s.
were England, mate, or Australia. Now I got myself confused, but it's pretty big.
Yeah.
I can't recommend that book enough. There's all kinds of great stories in there, and
I'll have to check.
Yeah,
in there.
It's got how
it could be done. In my mind right now, hearing about. I mean, like a short rower would have been back in my era, like someone who's 6'2".
Oh no, these guys were sub 6 feet.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
I think he was 5'8". There was a story where they had him on the podium. They were on the top box of the podium. The guys who were on second and third were actually taller than both of them on the top box of the podium.
Yeah. I mean,
yeah.
Opinion for the sport, unless you're lightweight, and even as a lightweight, that would be pretty short.
Yeah.
But I would imagine I'm gonna have to check that out. I mean, they had to be complete like aerobic monsters.
Yes.
Genetic, just the genetic lottery in that regard. But
and the selection committee for the country, whether Britain or Australia, they actually had troubles with the selection committee because the selection committee wanted the prototype. They wanted the tall, muscular, rower with a big engine. But something happened. Somehow they got in through a qualifier, and then and they ended up winning the whole thing. And
so cool.
Yeah, but the book is full of stories like that. It's like there's some cycling stories. I think there's Thomas Voeckler, Cadel Evans, Greg LeMond, Ned Overend, he's in there, but it's a lot of runners. Matt's a runner. If you have an interest, I can't recommend it enough. It's a great book.
Check it out for sure. Yeah. Great.
Really inspiring stuff.
Awesome.
Yep. All right.
And for apropos of nothing, if ever I give up cycling, which I hope never happens, the sport I go to is rowing. I find it intriguing. I think it's a fascinating sport.
I would love to, if you ever find yourselves in San Diego on a beach trip or whatever, let me know, look me up. I'll get you out there.
All right.
All right.
Great.
Okay. And then a total long shot. One of my longtime colleagues, he was a BMX hero of mine when I was a kid, but and he's now really into rowing. And he's in the San Diego area. His name's Perry Kramer. Do you happen to know
Perry
him?
Kramer. I don't know Perry Kramer, no.
Okay.
There are
It's a
only a
long
few
shot.
clubs here, but yeah.
Yeah.
I'll look at our roster and see. He's not in the group that I go with,
Okay.
but there's about 300 rowers at the club I belong to, so I certainly don't know everybody.
He started about 5 or 6 years ago, and he's really into it.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's kind of taken over for him. So it's pretty
Oh,
cool.
I'll look him up for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
So where can people find out more information about Freak Shake?
Freakshake.co, freakshake.co is the best place to go. And right now we're just selling it on Amazon and our website.
Okay.
But we've got a science page that with a reference list, a bibliography of citing all these claims that I'm spouting off here. We've got some of our studies that we're citing all available there if you really want to go down that rabbit hole. And yeah, give us a try.
And you got some athlete profiles on Instagram too, right?
Yes, we're doing some influencer stuff, not a ton yet, but we've been doing some outreach and had some, great partnerships, not only rowing, but running. And this hybrid athlete community is pretty exciting. We haven't gotten too far into cycling yet, just because it's a little, there's a little more competition there.
Yeah.
For some of the brands that you mentioned. But that's an area we definitely want to build our credentials. It's, great product for cycling.
All right. Now Dave and I are not vegan. We're not vegan. Is your product vegan?
It is not. No. So
Okay.
we use dairy protein isolates. So we can't claim vegan or dairy free.
Got it.
I would like to do a vegan formula at some point.
Mhm.
It's just not the first stop, as a new brand.
Sure. Yep. And is there plans on brick and mortar, trying to get it into some of
Yeah.
these chains, sporting goods shops, or even independent bicycle retailers and that kind of thing long term?
Eventually, we would love to. Yeah, we're still sort of, I think, iterating on packaging and positioning a little bit. Is you probably kind of picked that up in the way I've been talking about the product. So shifting towards recovery, and once we
Mhm.
get that dialed in, we'll be making a harder push into those channels. And I think the independent kind of cycling and running channels are a great place to credential a brand, because you've got folks like yourself who are extremely knowledgeable, who I think are our most compelling influencers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's also
Yeah.
intriguing to hear that you thought that other endurance sports weren't as up to speed as cycling, because with such a science now. But it's interesting that rowing and running, that these guys may not have as much, science.
Yeah,
That's fascinating.
I really I need to do a deeper dive on that. But like these high carb Martin and Scratch to some extent, they've really, I think, brought a lot of awareness to the need for carb fueling. And
Mhm.
these guys on the tour, they're taking 100 150 grams an hour,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and they're just as fast as ever. I mean, they're faster than they were when there was doping in the
Right.
sport, right? Like it's
Right.
and like, how else do you explain it, right? It just so I think it's inevitable that you're going to see this endurance kind of this emerging endurance category of sports nutrition and high carb fueling spill over into running. Rowing is probably a little closer to like CrossFit style endurance. We're not out for 5 hours.
Mhm.
So it's higher intensity, a little more emphasis on full functional strength and full body kind of movements. So weightlifting and things like that. So that community has picked up on it as well. So we found like kind of an interesting niche there, because the carb kind of story hasn't really penetrated that community that's a little more training in the gym and around weights and resistance,
Yeah.
as it has in cycling and maybe even running.
Cool.
Got it. All
Hey
right.
guys, I got to
So
jump. I have to get ready. I have to be somewhere at 6:30, so I
All
gotta
right.
jump. I
Yeah,
apologize.
we're wrapping it up right now,
All right.
Dave. Okay, settle
Hey,
down.
thanks so
What-
much.
No, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah,
Really.
yeah.
No, I only say that not because it got off, but I'm going to do the computer slam on you because I got to go.
All right, nice. All
No
right.
worries.
Well,
Yeah. Dave, get me your address so I can ship you some samples.
Right on.
beautiful. All right, Todd. Thanks so much. Check them out, freakshake.co for all the info. I can attest, great stuff. Using it myself. So, all right. Thanks for your time, Todd, and we'll talk again soon, hopefully.
Hope so. Cheers, fellas. Thanks
Yeah.
so much.
Thanks for listening, everybody.